here.
All right, this guy started a Muslim American cable TV network to challenge stereotypes about his faith. You know, apparently we're just too stupid. We just all think that all Muslims are bad. I guess that's what we all think. We all think that, you know, all Wall Streeters are greedy. There's not a single person that's a good guy. We think that all single moms are just, you know, they're all just on welfare. We can't even speak the truth anymore, which is a problem because now we don't know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. This guy, who was sticking up for the good guys, now accused of beheading his wife. He's been charged with second-degree murder. Police say there was a history of abuse, and his wife had gotten a restraining order and filed for a divorce, and then he cut her head off. Zuhdi Jasser is the founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. You know what, Zuhdi? A lot of people, you know, especially a few years ago, right after 9/11, you would hear somebody like you get on a Muslim and say, well, I don't agree with, you know, what he did, but, you know, who knows? His wife probably was a really, you know what I mean? Nobody actually will say the truth anymore to each other. This guy, he beheads his wife. I haven't seen this story really anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, this is the issue with sometimes when these things are as horrific as they are, Glenn. You know, my prayers go out to the family of Aasiya, the victim here, and especially her children who are now left motherless and with a father who's a Neanderthal and a barbarian. And you know, we have to look deeper. It's sort of like when you see, for example, crimes committed by alcoholism. And if you don't understand what the problem is with alcoholism, you're going to miss the problem. Okay, and so no matter how horrific the crimes are.
So what is the problem? Because there was another story, I don't know if you saw this, a guy from the UN that is, you know, part of the diplomatic squad from Afghanistan. His wife, she tried to get a divorce. He's beaten the snot out of her, stepping on her throat, whipping her with a belt. He's now facing 7 years in prison. He claimed diplomatic immunity, also claimed that she was beating him. Nobody in New York believed it, and this seems to be, at least in some places in the Middle East, the kind of attitude towards women.
Well, listen, I mean, my family came to the West because we wanted part of a culture that treats men and women equally, and that's the way we understood our faith. But the question is, which Islam is it? We can't be in denial as a Muslim community, like so many that have reacted to this, and say that this is just domestic violence. Here's a man that was dedicated to the faith, was putting a veneer on it, which was the only really, it was a network that was part of the Islamist infrastructure in America. And here you have, he was camouflaging his real life, which was one of domination and oppression of his wife that she wanted to get out of. And the underpinnings of that, Glenn, were theological. A wrong interpretation in my mind, but they were theological. And as long as we have Muslim organizations that continue to push forth interpretations of Islamic law that give women half the rights of men, give women inability to get the same inheritance, same votes in Islamic courts, that allow countries to establish Islamic law where women are stoned like the Taliban did. They can't drive in Saudi Arabia. But you know, all these things need reform, or we're going to continue to see acts like this. Okay,
Zuhdi, hang on just a second, because I want to ask you, there are places here in America where people are saying we need to have Sharia law, and people don't necessarily know that. We'll talk about it next. Back with Zuhdi Jasser on the beheading of a Muslim wife, of a TV executive in New York. Zuhdi, can you imagine if not even a TV executive, but anybody, if anybody went and beheaded their wife? That is such an amazing story. It's such an awful, awful story. How is this? Does it show the bias of the media by not telling this story?
It really does, and then you wonder why we are not making any progress in stopping the root causes of radical Islamism, because nobody wants to pay attention. Once it has the veneer of faith on it, they don't want to touch it. Imagine the exec at an Oxygen network or some other network doing this, like you said. It would be all over the news. We pay so much attention to Lacey Peterson and other things, but this, hardly any coverage.
Yeah, it would have been done if it was Pat Robertson doing it. It certainly would have been covered. In Pakistan, 90% of women, wives, are beaten. We see a culture here in our own country. I know you and I talked about it. It was like 2 years ago. It's up in the Minneapolis area. Remember when somebody was beaten, and they were beaten in the hallway, and In the Somali community, no one would talk about it. No one would report it. What is it that people in the Muslim community and these immigrant communities, what are they afraid of?
The women are oppressed to the point that they have lost their identity. And what I think this story should do is get the organizations like NOW, which actually did make a statement on this, and this is a nonpartisan issue that should wake up the feminists and all those that see the plight of women under political Islam to say, listen, let's not let this murder go without making Bridges TV turn into reformist TV and reinterpretation of the milieu of the culture that is theocratic, that gives men basically a slippery slope in which to control the lives of women, and there needs to be a liberation of women across the world. And I think you won't be surprised to find a parallel between jihadists and those who are male dominators that dehumanize women.
Okay, Zuhdi, thanks a lot. Final thoughts next.